This video isn't related to beer at all, but it's something that just reminded me of a neighbor I had. I was watching some videos on just different countries and how they talk. Something to do. And it reminded me of a neighbor I had about 2 years ago, not quite that long ago, who was from somewhere in England. I can't remember exactly where. Not London, but she told me, but I don't remember. The point is, so I didn't live in that house very long. It was a rental. And the roommate I had, he was fine. The owner of the house was basically a drunk, and he was a felon and really had an attitude. He just picked fights with people over anything. So yeah, I didn't stay there long. Well, he wasn't there one day, but my roommate, who I had no problem with, he was a fairly quiet guy. He was saying, yeah, by the way, you don't want to talk to our neighbor Elizabeth because, according to the owner, she's just, he was saying, according to the owner, she's a real bitch. She's just really hard to get along with. She has a lot of mental problems. Oh, okay, well, all right, that's fine, whatever. Didn't really think much more about it. A few days later, maybe a week or two so later, I was outside hauling in the garbage and recycling cans. Well, I took hers by mistake. I didn't notice ours were, I didn't put them out, the roommate did. He put them over by some bushes, and I thought those were the neighbors, so I took hers thinking they were ours. I had them wheeled almost all the way back up to her house. And Elizabeth, well, I didn't know her name at this point. She's like, no, 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 those are my cans. Those are my cans. Like, they are? She said, yeah, yours are over there. Like, oh, I didn't even notice. I started laughing, and I wheeled them over to her house, and then we started talking a little bit. She asked me what I do for a living, and it was obvious she was British by her accent. I didn't know that until I talked to her. I had no idea. We talked for a little bit, and I actually had no problem with her. I think we stood outside her house for a good half hour talking, and then she goes, why don't you come inside and we'll talk some more? And she found out I brew. I mentioned that sometime during our talk. And I said, well, if you'd like, I'll bring some of my kegs over, we can have some beer. She said, that's fine. So I ended up going back to the house, bringing over, I think, 4 kegs or something like that. I ended up staying at her place and talking to her for 7 hours. Yeah, I had no problem with her at all. She was a really friendly lady. And when the owner of the house is brought up, what was his name? Forget his name right now off the top of my head. When we brought him up, she started telling me a little bit about this guy. Oh yeah, well, she said he's actually a convicted felon. He's a drunk. He's had the cops over there a few times for his drunkenness and whatever else it was. And I'm like, oh, I remember his name is Dana. Now I remember his name is Dana. Um, so we talked and talked and talked, and I really liked her. We had a great conversation. Went home, later in the night, and ended up looking up, Googling his name, and I found out everything she said about him was right. He had a long criminal history, a lot of complaints, arrests, all kinds of shit about him. He ended up telling me to move out because he just, I guess I upset him by the fact I was brewing. But the guy, in fact, when I called and talked to him, he was pretty much an asshole on the phone too. When I was leaving, I was telling Elizabeth about him. She said, yeah, that's what he's like. That's exactly what he's like. The thing I thought was interesting, though, is Dana was going out of his way to say this lady's such a bitch. She was actually really nice. He was the asshole. I thought that was so odd. But, the only couple times I talked to Dana, he really was. He was a scumbag. Um, I just thought it was interesting that, I'm warned to not talk to this neighbor. She has all kinds of mental problems. Nah, she didn't. As long as we talked, if she would have had them, they would have came out. Now, you could say she was on medication. I never saw her go take any pills. Drinking, just had water and beer, so she wasn't on medication. It's just Dana was a prick. But, She's the only British lady I've ever talked to at length. I've had very brief conversations with some British, but never as long as her. Neat lady, I really liked her. And she said, if you ever went over anywhere in England, said people just be flocking around you because they love the American accent. I said to her, we all have an accent. It doesn't matter if you're America alone, North America, okay, the U.S., we have several. We have the Southern, the Northeastern, the Boston, the New York, the Midwest, the Northwest accent. We have tons of accents. You have New Zealand, Australia, Britain, German, Belgium, Spanish, Mexico. You have tons of, everybody has an accent. But I just thought that was interesting she mentioned that. So that's really all I wanted to bring up is just this interesting encounter with my neighbor that I was warned about. And after I got to know her a little bit during that night, I told her this is what Dana said. She goes, I'm not surprised. She goes, he's the prick, and he's had the cops called on him. She said he's really an asshole. Well, she didn't call him that, but she basically said he's a scumbag, and I'm not surprised he would say that about me because I don't like him. So anyway, that's just wanted to mention my neighbor here. I've never seen her again. In fact, I didn't. I live about 3 hours from that location now, so yeah, that's all.